I never believed in the supernatural until that fateful night at my grandmother's old Victorian house. The creaky floorboards and musty scent of aged wood had always unnerved me, but this time was different. As I settled into the guest room for what I hoped would be a peaceful night's sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and casting eerie shadows across the faded wallpaper. I tried to focus on my book, but the words swam before my eyes, refusing to make sense. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the storm. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. Swallowing hard, I convinced myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. I set my book aside and turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. As I lay there, willing sleep to come, the whispers returned, more insistent this time. "Help us," they seemed to say, a chorus of voices blending together in a haunting melody. My heart raced as I sat up, fumbling for the light switch. The bulb flickered to life, casting a weak glow around the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the air felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. Unable to shake my unease, I decided to investigate. The hallway outside my room was pitch black, the darkness so thick it felt like a physical entity. With shaking hands, I used my phone as a makeshift flashlight, its beam barely penetrating the gloom. As I crept down the corridor, the floorboards groaned beneath my feet, each step echoing in the silence. The whispers grew louder, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. I paused at the top of the stairs, my breath catching in my throat as I saw a figure standing at the bottom. "Grandma?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. It just stood there, a dark silhouette against the faint moonlight filtering through the window. As I took a hesitant step forward, the figure suddenly jerked its head up, its neck cracking at an impossible angle. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure began to ascend the stairs, its movements jerky and unnatural. As it drew closer, I could make out more details: the sunken eyes, the gray, mottled skin, the twisted grin that was far too wide to be human. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed, its voice a grating whisper that sent chills down my spine. I turned and ran, my feet pounding against the old wood as I sprinted back to my room. I slammed the door shut, fumbling with the lock as I heard the thing's footsteps drawing nearer. Just as I engaged the lock, something heavy thudded against the door, making me jump back in terror. "Let us in," the voices chanted, no longer just whispers but a cacophony of pleas and demands. "We've been waiting so long." I pressed my back against the far wall, my eyes darting around the room for an escape. The window was my only option, but I was on the second floor. As I debated the merits of risking a fall versus facing whatever was on the other side of that door, a cold hand gripped my ankle. I looked down, my scream catching in my throat as I saw a pale, emaciated arm reaching out from under the bed. Its fingers, unnaturally long and tipped with jagged nails, dug into my skin. "Join us," a raspy voice whispered from beneath the bed. "Become one with us." I kicked frantically, trying to free myself from its grasp. The pounding on the door grew more insistent, the wood beginning to splinter under the assault. In my panic, I noticed the old wardrobe in the corner of the room. Without thinking, I lunged for it, wrenching open the doors and throwing myself inside. The musty smell of old clothes enveloped me as I pulled the doors shut, trying to control my ragged breathing. Through the crack between the doors, I watched in horror as my bedroom door finally gave way. Shadowy figures poured into the room, their forms shifting and twisting in ways that defied reality. "Where are you, little one?" one of them crooned, its voice a sickening parody of affection. "We only want to play." I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a whimper as they began searching the room. The floorboards creaked under their weight, and I could hear them opening drawers and looking under the bed. My heart nearly stopped when one of them paused in front of the wardrobe. come out, wherever you are," it sang, its clawed hand scraping against the wood. Just as I thought it was over, that they would find me and do God knows what, a loud crash came from downstairs. The creatures in my room froze, their attention drawn to the new sound. "Intruders," one of them hissed. "We must protect the house." As quickly as they had appeared, the entities vanished from my room, their forms dissipating like smoke. I remained in the wardrobe, too terrified to move, straining my ears for any sound. Minutes passed like hours. Eventually, I heard footsteps approaching my room again. These were different, though heavier, more purposeful. A beam of light swept across the room, and I heard a familiar voice. "Hello? Is anyone here?" It was my uncle, who lived nearby. Grandma must have called him when I didn't answer her calls. Relief flooded through me as I burst out of the wardrobe, nearly tackling him in a desperate hug. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched on his face as he took in my disheveled appearance and tear-streaked cheeks. I opened my mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could I possibly describe what I had experienced? Would he even believe me? As I stood there, struggling to find the right words, I noticed something over my uncle's shoulder. In the hallway behind him, a shadow moved, impossibly dark against the already dim background. It seemed to wink at me before sliding out of sight. My blood ran cold as I realized this nightmare was far from over. Whatever resided in this house had allowed me a temporary reprieve, but I knew with chilling certainty that it wasn't finished with me. As my uncle led me downstairs, talking about getting me checked out at the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The entities in the house had retreated for now, but they were still there, waiting. And somehow, I knew that no matter where I went, no matter how far I ran, a part of me would always be trapped in that old Victorian house, forever looking over my shoulder, waiting for the whispers to begin again. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, I glanced back at the house. For a split second, I swore I saw faces pressed against every window, their eyes glowing in the darkness, their mouths stretched in silent screams. Then I blinked, and they were gone. But the whispers remained, a faint echo in the back of my mind. "We'll be waiting for you to return. And next time, you won't escape so easily." I shuddered, knowing that this was only the beginning of a terror that would haunt me for the rest of my days. The true horror wasn't just what I had experienced in that house, but the knowledge that it wasn't over. That it might never be over. As my uncle's car pulled away from the curb, I couldn't help but wonder how many others had encountered the entities in that house. How many had been less fortunate than me? And most chillingly, how long would it be before they found a way to reach me, even outside the confines of that cursed place? The questions swirled in my mind, each more terrifying than the last. I knew sleep would be elusive for a long time to come, my nights haunted by the memory of those whispers and the knowledge that somewhere, in that old Victorian house, something was waiting for me to return. And deep down, in a part of myself I didn't want to acknowledge, I feared that someday, I might answer that call. That the entity's whispers would grow too loud to ignore, drawing me back to face whatever horrors awaited me in the shadows of my grandmother's house. As we drove through the dark, empty streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger, more terrifying story. One that would unfold in the days, weeks, and years to come, testing the limits of my sanity and challenging everything I thought I knew about the world. The true scary stories, I realized, weren't just those that kept you up for a night. They were the ones that followed you into the light of day, lingering at the edges of your consciousness, waiting for the moment when your guard was down to remind you that the boundary between our world and the realm of nightmares was far more fragile than we'd like to believe. And as the house faded from view in the rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the certainty that somewhere in the darkness behind us, something was following, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the memories of that night at my grandmother's house refused to fade. I tried to move on with my life, throwing myself into work and surrounding myself with friends, but the whispers lingered at the edges of my consciousness, a constant reminder of the horrors I'd encountered. It was on a crisp autumn evening, nearly a year after that fateful night, when things took a turn for the worse. I was walking home from a late night at the office, the streets eerily quiet save for the rustling of leaves and the wind. As I passed by an old cemetery, a familiar chill ran down my spine. "We've been waiting for you," a voice whispered on the breeze. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Slowly, I turned towards the cemetery gates, half expecting to see one of the entities from my grandmother's house. Instead, I saw a young girl standing just beyond the wrought iron fence. Her pale skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, and her eyes were too dark, too hollow to be human. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The girl smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "We are the ones you left behind," she said, her voice a chorus of whispers. "But we never left you." Before I could react, the girl vanished like smoke in the wind. I ran home, slamming and locking the door behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. As I leaned against the door, trying to calm myself, I noticed something on my kitchen table that hadn't been there when I left for work that morning. It was an old, leather-bound book, its cover worn and cracked with age. With shaking hands, I opened it, revealing pages filled with arcane symbols and disturbing illustrations. A slip of paper fell out, bearing a message in spidery handwriting: "The key to your salvation, or your doom." Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed with the book. I pored over its pages, trying to decipher its cryptic text and understand the significance of its bizarre diagrams. As I delved deeper into its mysteries, strange things began to happen around me. Objects would move on their own when I wasn't looking. Shadows in the corners of my eyes seemed to take on a life of their own. And the whispers, they grew louder, more insistent. "Join us," they urged. "Embrace the darkness." I knew I was losing my grip on reality, but I couldn't stop. The book had awakened something inside me, a hunger for knowledge that bordered on madness. I began to see connections between the arcane symbols and the entities I'd encountered in my grandmother's house. It was all connected, part of some vast, cosmic horror that lurked just beyond the veil of our reality. One night, as I sat hunched over the book, I felt a presence behind me. Slowly, I turned to see a figure standing in the shadows of my living room. It was tall and gaunt, its features hidden beneath a tattered hood. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure raised a skeletal hand, pointing at the book. "We are the guardians of the knowledge you seek," it said, its voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "But knowledge comes at a price." "What price?" I asked, even as a part of me screamed to run, to burn the book and never look back. The figure's hood fell back, revealing a face that was both ancient and timeless, its eyes swirling vortexes of darkness. "Your humanity," it hissed. In that moment, I realized the true horror of what I'd stumbled into. The book, the entities, the whispers, they were all part of something far greater and more terrifying than I could have imagined. A cosmic game where the stakes were not just my life, but my very soul. I slammed the book shut and backed away, but the figure advanced, its form shifting and twisting in impossible ways. "You cannot escape what you've begun," it said, its voice now a cacophony of screams and whispers. In desperation, I grabbed the book and ran from my apartment, not knowing where I was going, only that I had to get away. The streets were deserted, shrouded in an unnatural fog that seemed to whisper as I passed through it. I found myself at the gates of the old cemetery where I'd seen the ghostly girl. Without thinking, I entered, the iron gates creaking shut behind me. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, and I saw shadowy figures moving between the gravestones. "Welcome home," they seemed to say. As I stood there, the book clutched to my chest, I realized I had a choice to make. I could continue down this path, unraveling the mysteries of the book and the entities that haunted me, but at the cost of my sanity and possibly my soul. Or I could end it here, destroy the book and try to reclaim my normal life. But deep down, I knew there was no going back. The moment I'd opened that book, I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. The entities, the cosmic horrors lurking just beyond our reality, they were aware of me now, and they wouldn't let me go easily. With trembling hands, I opened the book once more. The pages seemed to turn on their own, revealing a ritual I hadn't noticed before. It promised a way to confront the entities, to understand the true nature of the horrors that plagued me. As I began to recite the words on the page, the air around me grew thick and heavy. The shadows between the gravestones coalesced, taking on monstrous forms. I saw things that defied description, creatures from beyond the stars and beneath the earth. The whispers reached a fever pitch, and I felt something fundamental shifting within me. It was as if the veil between worlds was thinning, and I was being pulled through to the other side. In that moment of cosmic terror and revelation, I understood the true nature of fear. It wasn't just about things that go bump in the night or monsters under the bed. Real horror was the realization that our world, our very reality, was far more fragile and terrifying than we could ever imagine. As the ritual reached its climax, I saw a door opening before me, not a physical door, but a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Beyond it, I glimpsed realms of madness and wonder, of terror and beauty beyond human comprehension. I stood on the threshold, the book still clutched in my hands, faced with the ultimate choice. Step through and embrace the cosmic horror, gaining knowledge and power at the cost of my humanity? Or turn back, destroy the book, and live with the knowledge of what lurked beyond the veil, forever haunted by what might have been? The entities whispered, urging me forward. The cosmic winds pulled at me, threatening to drag me through whether I wanted to go or not. In that moment of terrifying clarity, I made my choice. I took a step forward, towards the unknown. As I crossed the threshold, I felt my body, my mind, my very essence begin to change. I was becoming something other than human, a being that straddled the line between our world and the realms beyond. The cemetery faded away, replaced by vistas of impossible geometry and colors that had no name in human language. I saw the true face of the universe, beautiful and terrifying in its cosmic indifference. And as I ascended to this new state of being, I realized that my journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The horrors I'd experienced, the terrors that had kept me up at night, they were merely the first steps on a path that would take me to the very edges of existence and beyond. The book dissolved in my hands, its knowledge now a part of me. I understood now that there were layers upon layers of reality, each more terrifying and wondrous than the last. And I was now a part of it all, a witness to cosmic horrors and a participant in games played by entities beyond mortal comprehension. As I embraced my new existence, I couldn't help but think of the world I'd left behind, of the people who would never know the truths I'd discovered, who would continue to live their lives blissfully unaware of the cosmic terrors that lurked just beyond their perception. In that moment, I realized the true nature of the most chilling, scary stories. They weren't just tales to keep you up at night. They were glimpses of a reality too vast and terrifying for the human mind to comprehend. A reality I was now a part of. And as I set out to explore the infinite realms of cosmic horror that now lay before me, I couldn't help but wonder how many others would follow in my footsteps. How many would be drawn into this world of terror and wonder, forever changed by the knowledge they gained. The whispers that had once haunted me now surrounded me, a constant reminder of my transformation. They spoke of ancient truths and eldritch horrors, of worlds beyond imagination and entities older than time itself. I had become the very thing that had once terrified me, a being of cosmic horror and forbidden knowledge. And as I drifted through the infinite realms of existence, I knew that my story, my true scary story, would continue for eternity, a never-ending journey through the darkest corners of reality and beyond. The cemetery, my old life, the world I once knew, they all faded into insignificance as I embraced my new existence. I had transcended humanity, becoming something both more and less than what I once was. And yet, a small part of me, the last remnant of my human self, couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. For in gaining this cosmic awareness, I had lost something fundamental. The ability to truly rest, to close my eyes and find peace in the darkness of sleep. For now, I was always awake, always aware of the infinite horrors and wonders that surrounded me. My story had become a true scary story, one that would continue to unfold for all eternity, keeping not just me, but perhaps the entire cosmos, up at night. As I drifted through the void between worlds, I realized that my transformation was both an end and a beginning. The end of my human existence, but the beginning of an eternal journey through realms of cosmic horror that no mortal mind could fully comprehend. And so, my story, my true scary story, continues, echoing through the infinite corridors of existence, a testament to the terrors that await those who dare to peer beyond the veil of reality.